Tonight we're going to have some of the unpublished Kyroots read that I've had requests over the last several years from here and from out of town. And if we have time, perhaps one or two papers that some of you have never heard, or one-shot written missiles from, what's his name, Kyroot. Let's begin. Someone gave me a killer question while you were reading the Kyroots. I looked at it again and decided to expand a little bit on it. Before I read the question, let me refer back to some of last week, wherein I mentioned life insisting that people explain themselves, and that you should take it as being your holy duty not to explain shit. Let me put it to you another way, sans profanity. A real person, not a real man and quiche and all that. I got the real one for you. A real man or woman would be a person who could keep a diary and never use the word I. And do you realize that everyone is keeping a diary? What passes for your own private thoughts and feelings? What absolutely is the oxygen base of this combustion that seems to be a running dialogue internally, or a running monologue that you take as being your own private thoughts, your own cynical, your own critical comments upon the nature of everyone else and the nature of life. All of this is a diary. But who could say that they are already a man or woman enough that you can keep a diary, that you could go along in a certain respect and continue to note these observations? But you could do it all and keep this diary and never use the word I. Now you can have several seconds and try real hard. Go. And think, if my question was very direct and quite material, would it be possible for a person to keep a diary every day and never say I, never use the word I in the diary? Could it be done? Here we go. Now what if you did not have to actually write down in a little book from Woolworth's? If what passes for being your conscious observations, notes, reactions to what is taking place, what seems to be the other part of the equation that is not I, that seems to be taking place outside of you, could that be done? Could this diary be kept and you never use the word I? Well, I'm here to, let me rephrase that. What I want you to, well, wait a minute. What I was intent, if you could keep such a diary, if in a sense you could let, generally speaking, this internal flow continue to go on in a certain way, and you could extract, you could stop the use of the word I, what would you have? You would have that which would be close to the impossible, that I used to laughingly refer to in the words, or the word of objectivity. I would not prefer to say that you would be a clinician. You could indeed be clinical. Your diary would be a clinical notebook of the areas in life's body wherein you have what may appear to be inexplicably found yourself from time to time. from time to time being from moment to moment. If indeed I'm insinuating that there would be some benefit of being able to keep a diary without using the word I, how could you make this logically palatable? How could this in any way be proven to be of any significance? First off, if you were attempting to do so, you would have to the persons that you were attempting to convert, to enlighten, you would have to do what? You would have to refer to I. As soon as you were about to speak to them on the basis that there could be some benefit, there could be some lasting value in being able to keep a diary. To be able to be, as it were, routinely conscious, and then become extraordinarily routinely conscious by being conscious without the use of the word I. You would have to say to the people, first off, I, and you're no longer clinical. Based upon the flaming response, I'll refresh your memory about another piece from last week. Conclusions. Can you see that ordinary consciousness, that is, the ordinary makings of each and every person being a diary keeper, that ordinarily people are seeking to become their own conclusion? You could say the many are seeking to become their own conclusion, wherein the few seek to become an ongoing merger. How can you keep a diary if you came to no conclusion? If you made no comment? That if you were attempting to, or if you began to note your date of earlier this evening, and now you're home and you're going to fill in, complete the diary for the day, and you make no conclusive comment about the date, would this pass for a diary in anyone's book? For instance, it makes it worse and distracts from the inherent beauty of this, but I guess I'm going to have to, based upon your response thus far, that you would have to do such things as, quote, this is in your diary, regarding my date with Fred or Mary this evening. Dear diary, regarding said date, nothing. Nothing is not what you write down, but you put regarding said date, then the page is blank. Your diary would say, come on, come on. What are you trying to do? Drive me nuts? Give me a break? Yeah, your date with Fred or Mary? Yeah. And you close the book. This is what I was also referring to last week as being the, at least verbally, absolutely irrational and unsatisfactory arrangement that I seem to be describing, wherein for the few people it is just the opposite. It's not just the opposite in words, but it is just the opposite that everyone else is wired up. The molecular arrangement of humans, especially when you were talking about getting into the higher circuits, it appears to be so in the lower circuits. It's of no great mystical significance, but what's the point of eating? It's to come to a conclusion. That is, the conclusion is, I'm full. What's the point of laying down and resting? It's to come to some conclusion that you and the partnership at some later time will assume, most of you, say, well, I think I've rested enough. Then you came to the resting conclusion. And people finally say, I have had enough of living, I believe I'll die. And so saying, they do. Wherein verbally, you've got to turn it inside out. What you're attempting to do by doing this is not to reach a conclusion. Furthermore, you're not even attempting to not reach a conclusion. You do not seek to become your own conclusion, to become your own good person, your own Buddhist, Jew, Republican, Koanon, etc. But you do not seek to become your own conclusion in the diary. A conclusion would be the end of Wall Street. The ticker tape would be shut down. The few people are attempting to become an ongoing merger. Notice I say ongoing, not a simple merger, because a merger would be a conclusion. Company B bought out Company C. Period. Then you got a conclusion. But if it is an ongoing merger, you're always 1 second behind. You're always 1 step behind. A simple merger, because a merger would be a conclusion. Company B bought out Company C. Period. Then you got a conclusion. But if it is an ongoing merger, you're always 1 second behind. You're always 1 step behind. It would be an ongoing merger of that which one believes is the diary keeper, in conjunction with that which one believes that the diary keeper is attempting to note, remember, comment upon. You keep the two from coming to a conclusion, and you're getting close to an ongoing merger. But of course, taking this all literally, you're getting close to an area that should be surrounded by, I guess we need a new international symbol, saying extreme hazardous irrationale. Radioactive, perhaps, foolishness. I liked the description so much last week that I wanted to leave it for a long time, but here I am back with it. That truly everyone is seeking to become a conclusion. That's what, from a very real viewpoint, from one very real viewpoint, that is what all religion's about, that's what sex is about, that's what business is about, that's what the desire to go shopping, to acquire possessions, to accumulate things, to have hobbies, collect stamps, collect women, collect men, collect ideas, collect opinions, collect anger. It is an attempt to become a conclusion. Being alive, you are conclusion-driven. If it was correctly seen, more than wanting a new car, more than wanting the world's rarest stamp, more than wanting relief from sore feet, what people are wanting are to become conclusions. Also, without knowing it, what you're attempting to do in doing this, what I'm attempting to, as best I can, being outside of your equation, to try and trick you, to misdirect you, to encourage you to do, is to see that the only proper conclusion for the few is to be able to abandon the desire to be a conclusion, be able to escape the foregone conclusion that you were going to become a conclusion. But if you were in a race with the Red Queen, you got to stay always 1 step even ahead of her. Anything that can even be described as being fast enough is not fast enough, because you're already at a conclusion, saying, well, I've done the best I can. You might as well be a damn Christian. Well, that's enough for today. You might as well be a stockbroker. Or to say, well, I'm satisfied, or worse yet, I'm tired. You could, on that basis, I suspect, go into the religious biz in some form. To keep this sounding as though we're coming to any conclusion, which is not, I'm going to read you parts of this extraordinary note and question. Given that it is not necessarily beneficial to live alone for an extended period of time, and given that sexual attraction does not seem easy to sustain, etc., that's not important. Given that a full attraction exists, here we go. Is it possible, now they're quoting me, is it possible to fake it till you make it in regards to sexual attraction? Or is one attempting to fight against one's own genetic makeup in such an area? And I will give you, I'll tell you this much. A woman wrote the question. The only reason that I point that out to you is that there are two, believe it or not, two obvious directions in which one should look. And in this case, the obvious directions are not simply C and D. For once, a change of pace. It's in the two areas of men and women. I've received such questions as this before, and to the best of my recollection, this is the first time a woman has written this. I've had men ask me this on numerous occasions from this group, on the basis that they do not have a present relationship with anybody in this group. They don't see the likelihood. They don't see anybody available. Nobody here that is available seems to strike their fancy. And the men have asked all sorts of questions about, should I go out and just try and find somebody outside the group? Or if I'm just going out and find somebody outside the group, is there any particular type I should look for? Is it all going to be the same? Questions further on the basis that I have already tried this, and boy, it doesn't seem satisfying anymore, and aren't I pitiful? What balm can you offer me? All right, that together with the heart of this question, is it possible to fake it in regards to sexual attraction, or are you fighting against your genetic makeup? Anytime we're talking about faking it till you make it, anytime we're talking about change, you are talking about going against your makeup. Absolutely. You're talking about going against your makeup if you were wired up to be a kind of person that says, I have no great desire to change. All the way from that to people who would swear that they would do anything. They will take all sorts of journeys, dance and whirl, pray all kinds of prayers, take all kinds of drugs, drink all kinds of alcohol to change. Make the supreme sacrifices. In all cases, what you're talking about is an attempt to go against one's genetic makeup. The unsaid part of this question is there any significance to this? It's the beautiful land of this and that again. An ordinary person would discover no significance in trying to change. But the unrecognized part is they can't change. And so the whole question is moot, except for them it doesn't appear to be moot. It cannot be proven to be of no consequence. It's not necessary, it's not even proper to be able to prove such. But what ordinary consciousness cannot take on a full circle of this merry-go-round, like people being out of work in America, and then you complete that circle I drew out for you, and you come back to many people seem to be out of jobs in 1987 in America because of the Japanese influence on our economy, and you carry through my scenario enough, or a scenario that somebody else came up with. I just repeated to you, it comes back in the completion of one circle of straining constraining the absolute molecular makeup of your own little yellow circuit would be that the circle is completed by Japan now building factories in America so that they can hire American labor, which is now cheaper than back at home. And you're back where it started, that they had put American workers out of work. And the yellow circuit goes, what? It withers. On a similar basis is the yellow circuit attempting to take note of such matters as, I was attempting to put in words again, that it doesn't matter what happens to an ordinary person, even if they believe it matters, even if they don't believe it matters, even if they don't see any difference. It doesn't matter because nothing can change. In the yellow circuit, the ordinary mind can do nothing with that. If I wanted to be more poetic again, then I could say, if we're going to say, all right, everybody's in prison. Poor old us, poor old humanity, we're locked down for the night. We're all doing full time. We're all doing at least life in a day. And the real bars of each person's cell is the fact that they do not know that they're in jail. It's invisible. It's beyond consciousness. There is no way, given the present makeup of man's circuitry, especially the higher parts of his circuitry, there is no way to bring the higher circuitry to a conclusion that it is captive. It cannot reach such a conclusion. It cannot be driven there. It cannot be dragged there. So you could say, if we were speaking poetically and allegorically of people being in prison, that the bars are absolutely invisible. They're invisible holographically. That is, they're more than invisible. They're invisible times 3. The question as to whether a particular thing, in this case attempting to fake sexual attraction, trying to fake a sexual relationship with someone with whom you're not attracted, you're dealing with the invisible. You're dealing with that is of no consequence to an ordinary person. And then back or up to the level of one of you asking this, is we're into the great world of men/women. It would take an extraordinary man to willfully fake it. It would take an extraordinary man, and I'm not using this term extraordinary man on the basis of encouraging you, any of you, to go out and do this. You're welcome to go out and do it, to try it. But it would be an extraordinary man who could fake, I don't mean just a single sexual act, but to fake to any degree, for any length of time, a continuing, even if it's for a week, a month, sexual attraction to a woman to whom he was not sexually attracted. Now, to all you mano men, it may come as a shock to know that, generally speaking, women are not so subjected, that the parameters that women are wired up to feel sexual attraction, and I even hesitate to use the same term of sexual attraction from women, the same as men experience sexual attraction to women. There is no exact vice versa. I'm not a woman, but I can see and feel and understand that much that it is not vice versa. It is not. But men could not even come close to being able to fake a sexual attraction, to hold for any length of time what appears to be a real passionate love affair, a sexual affair, a relationship with a woman that as soon as he saw her, as soon as he smelled her, as soon as he saw her shadow, as soon as he got in the same room, as soon as in some way molecularly he was aware of her, and she might as well have been an ottoman or a fern. It is going to take somebody extremely non-ordinary, a man, to be able to fake any kind of relationship. Now, I shouldn't have to go any further. All of you men, I'm assuming, have been around the block once or twice. That none of you men are truly from Fort Lee or Birmingham. And you hear what I'm saying. It's happened to you sometime in your life if you've been around the block once or twice. A blind date. Or a friend grabs you in a bar and says, come over here, we've got two girls. And he's already, his nostrils are all wide open, and he's got something good. And he drags you over, and as soon as you sit down, he says, oh, and he's sitting here with this girl, and he says, this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so. And he pushes you over, and as soon as you look at her, she might as well be Yogi Berra. You know nothing is going to happen. It's just, she may not be ugly, she may not smell bad. It's just, he might as well say, you know, sit down here and have a chat with William F. Buckley. But I do like to point out such things to scare some of the children. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again so that you'll know that it's a fact. If I repeat it twice, it's a fact. There is not an exact similar situation with women. If you men indeed have been around the block, I'll point this out to you. There's every likelihood, if you've been to bed with more than a handful of women, there's every likelihood in the world that you've been to bed with women, or women's been to bed with you, either way you want to look at it, and the women, if there was an exact similar that I could vice versa on you, which it's not, but it would be similar to a woman feeling like she had been to bed with William F. Buckley. Women have been to bed with you that under most routine circumstances would not have given you the day of the month, much less the time of day. And they did it. But there is not an exact situation similar to men, notwithstanding the fact I'm sure some of you have been drunk or stoned enough that you felt as though you can identify those good old hillbilly songs about waking up and wondering who the hell is this and why did I do that. That doesn't count. I'm talking about under sober, everyday circumstances. You have not been through similar circumstances. And women can also, besides, I don't intend to leave this as a one-night stand situation. Women can end up in a long-term relationship, married to, living for the rest of their life with some man that if there was an exact parallel between men and women's sexual attraction, which I'll tell you one more time there's not, if there was, then a woman would have to admit, if you could speak to her and she understood what you were trying to get at vis-a-vis a man, she would have to say, on the basis of, are you actually sexually attracted to him? Or as the old folks and the dunderheads like to say, do you actually love him? And if she understood that it was a man asking what he meant, the answer would be no. But with no inference that I dislike him or that I hate him in some way. But it's like, do you actually love him, or is there something passionate? Is that really what you were after? But here it is, they're past the age of 25 or 30, and you might say, well, is it a big deal? No, it's no big deal. It's like, when I was a kid, again, if women had such dreams, it'd be like a woman saying, well, when I was a kid, I always wanted a Corvette, and I ended up with a Honda, but you know, what the hell, it gets me back and forth to the store and to work. And I'm past the point I don't have time to fool with it anymore. I'm not going to worry about it. There is this. I didn't bring this question just to make little jokes, apparent jokes. In times past, there have been handfuls of you men especially. I don't think I've ever given an exact, if there was one, an exact parallel kind of task to an individual woman here. But I have given out some tasks before that came up alongside some of you men's questions in times past regarding such matters as this, as this was all individual. It wasn't a group task. As some of you individually go out and try and pick up, not just sexually, but at least try to go out to a bar, to a public place where men and women meet, and actually find a woman who's not your type, which is not hard to do. You just first go in, you see which ones attract you, and then you count them off the list, and you walk over to another one that might as well be William F. Buckley, and try and get her interested. Try and get her to go out with you. If you can really do it, try and take her home if you want to try and turn it into a sexual encounter. But to actually treat this woman that you have no immediate attraction for, which is no attraction at all, is to end up producing some kind of relationship, even if it's just for the night. I have never had any overwhelming reports of you people coming back. Now, I've had a wink or two from some of you, like that was really worthwhile. But I've never had any man I gave that particular task to come back and say, hey, that was so good, is there a better one along the same line? Of course, now some of you, it's been only 3 or 4 years since I did it, so I'm sure you're still pondering it and working on it and trying to extract the last bit of wisdom and experience from it. But I will note that no one has asked for a further exposition in this particular area, or to ask whether there is a souped-up version of this. And I don't mean to make this appear to be sounding more mystical in some way than it is. We are still talking about genes. We're talking about the molecular makeup. And you cannot change it, which is, I suggest to you, as I have before, is part of the popularity worldwide of alcohol and drugs, is that it can apparently, especially with men, all you got to do is look around. Women do not get together, and women individually, this is of no statistical value, they do not have to sit around, they do not sit around and think, boy, I'll have myself a couple of drinks, now run out to the bar and see what I can do. It's men have a couple of drinks. And you cannot, by the way, or you're making a mistake if you tried to look at this and assume it was simply as ordinary psychology would have it. It's a matter of you being shy, of being psychologically dwarfed from some childhood trauma that you've got to have a few drinks to steel your nerve. That's a childish explanation. It's very common for men throughout the world to have a couple of drinks before they go out to meeting places, whether it be around a campfire at an oasis, or whether it be around the church social in a little village or township somewhere, or whether it be a singles bar nowadays. Because of this, forget the so-called psychological explanations, is alcohol affects very quickly, very directly, substantially so, the molecular structure of how you are reacting to stimuli, to all the information coming in the senses. And what it can do is apparently, temporarily, make you molecularly react differently. Put more simply, of course, is, well, I get drunk enough and I can go to bed with a cow. No, and I have. Women do not operate on that basis. They don't seem to need it. Things have not been arranged in life's body to where it was needed on that basis. But I am pointing out to you again, to look upon alcohol, for instance, as being the work of the devil or something evil is to miss the point. Life has really used it. But that shows the kind of extreme chemical effect it will take for a man to even temporarily, for several hours, to apparently have some attraction to someone that he would not normally be molecularly, genetically attracted to. There's no danger in any of you trying to fake it, as I was saying about the task that I've given some of you in the past. It is truly, if you were fortunate enough, and if you were studious enough, that it happened at an optimum tempo and time, that men can learn a death-defying secret. It really qualifies as a secret from an experience of trying to deal with a woman with whom he has no immediate mechanical attraction. Because one thing, if you know how to do it, you can verbally get them to tell you things that you will never hear. Put crudely, you can get them to tell you the truth. Put more crudely, you can get them to tell you things about yourself that they don't believe any man wants to hear. Crudely, crudely, crudely example, if you can get yourself in that kind of relationship, if you just, maybe for a few hours, and you can hold on to the control of it, you could ask a woman such things as, what do you like about me? And clinically she'll say nothing. or after me explaining myself to you for the last several hours, showing you my condo, showing you my car, telling you where I went to school and everything I've done, what do you think of me? And clinically she says, you're an idiot. Maybe not those words, but clinically, she will tell you, you're crazy. You're just as crazy as hell. I bet you're awfully impressed with me, aren't you? Now, I'm just hoping that I'll survive the night alive and that you don't kill me. Of course, now we have the question as to who would like to hear such crap as that. I know, don't. I certainly wouldn't force that upon you. I would refer you back, those of you who have forgotten it, the grand old story of Socrates and his so-called fishwife. Now, he cherished her. Because there are many a man involved with this, people who think they're interested in this, that could be hit in the face stronger than they would believe that I have ever done with anything I've ever said or any task I've ever given, by having a woman respond to them in a clinical manner, such as, what do you actually think of me, baby? She says, you're crazy. In just an ordinary sense, you're just nuts. Yeah, but what do you think of my mind after, for the last 2 hours, I've been explaining my outlook of philosophy and economics and politics? Yeah, you're intellectually crazy, too. I'm surprised you're still on the street. Aren't you delighted to have met me tonight? No? Could I call you again sometime? Would you be glad to hear from me? Not a chance. Now, what I'm inferring, as I was telling you why I threw in the term clinical, I'm not trying to convey to you any sarcasm at all, any criticism. But you've got to be in a situation, it would have to be in this case a sexual situation, where there is no true, in the ordinary sense, mechanical transfer of heat, of energy going on between you two, which is why it becomes moot, because ordinarily this does not happen. You would have to force it to happen. A man would, not a woman, because a woman can, as I was trying to also indicate to you, she can almost let it happen. She can almost go along with it if nothing better is going on and the TV's broke. But that doesn't count. It would take all of a man's wherewithal, an extraordinary man to start with, to find such a situation, to bring it to some even hourly fruition. But it's not going to happen, because it does not happen. Speaking of attraction and love and etc., and since I was throwing in just now something about the transfer of energy, I'm about to be a little dirtier. In a certain way, if you could see it, ordinary love, just what is called love between men and women now. I'm not talking about any poetic or would-be spiritual sense, but what is referred to as love, what passes for love, from one very real view, could be simply seen as a form of domination without overt violence. Now, I'm not making a social commentary now. I'm telling you a fact. I tried to get you to make note in the last several weeks. We still have the situation, even though I'd gone months without referring to it, that within the scheme of things, within the role that humanity is playing in the life of life, in the body of life, the transfer of energy, slash heat, slash information, slash ... you have always an imbalance. If you're going to have the heat on in here, if it's going to move about, there's got to be cold areas in the room. You got to open the door. You got to move up higher in the building, in the enclosure. You've got to have heat moving from where it is warmer to where it is cooler. The same thing with information. If two people know the same thing, you can't convey an information. There's got to be an imbalance. Frank Sinatra cannot come out and entertain 2,000 people who are Frank Sinatra. Jesus could not come out and impress, in some spiritual or philosophical sense, 12 other Jesuses. There has to be the imbalance. There has to be always that he, she, them who are dominant in this particular situation, and those who need to be dominated. And the examples I threw out to you, some of the possible examples, I included, if you recall, men and women. I even included parents and children. Any situation where two people are dancing, where somebody's performing, somebody's watching, where two people are talking, if it goes on for a length of time, if it goes on at a tempo proper enough to be classified, which right now you're just going to have to go on me saying it would be classified as it being a situation, being an occurrence, being a transfer of energy of some kind, then there's going to be this imbalance. There's going to be a dominant person or persons involved, and one who, or some group who is being dominated. Now, it is not normally seen in this way, but what in the ordinary world now passes for love between a man and a woman, that you just simply look up on them and it looks like they're in love. What you have got, and it may not be in the direction that you might immediately think, especially you damn men, what you have got is a case of domination / subjection without apparent, without overt violence. There, once you can begin to see this, there is where this inexplicable, always present edge of possible violence exists in the ordinary love affairs between men and women. Why, according to the last statistics I vaguely recall, 70 or 80% of all homicides do not take place in the 7-Eleven market. They take place at home. They take place amongst the family, lovers. Psychology, religion, poets throughout history have mused, pondered, attempted to explain why it is that hostility, even homicide, seems to go hand in hand with, is always so close to so-called love. And I'm telling you why. What is normally referred to as love out in the horizontal world is a form of dominance. But initially, it may show no signs of violence. Contrary, the rushing to each other's arms, the sweet little words, the little remembrances, the candies, the I'll worship you, I'll kiss your little toes, I'll nibble on your little kneecaps. But then it can jump from that to I'll cut your fucking throat. But even in the beginning, the love part, the lovey-dovey part, is a form of dominance. It is always an imbalance. If there's any relationship, if it's a man selling aluminum siding and somebody in the market, or somebody who seems agreeable, I can't believe they're in the market, but somebody who seems agreeable to buy aluminum siding, you've got to see you've got an imbalance. You have got an imbalance of two people who say, or one of them says to the other one, boy, I love you, and the other one, through word or deed, says, all right, I'm available to be loved. You got the imbalance. They just bought the package. They just said, put it on, I'll pay for it as I go. Be sure and don't knock my gutters down as you're putting it up. So you get loved or you get sided. In either case, there has been, based upon an initial imbalance, there has been a transfer of heat. If you prefer to see it another way, there has been a transfer of energy. If you care to see it another way, there has been a transfer of attention. If you care to look at it another way, there has been a transfer of information. If you care to see it another way, there has been a transfer of blood. Not your blood, life's blood. And in all cases where an imbalance attempts to balance itself, that is, the heat coming out of the furnace down here continues to rise higher and higher into the far corners to bring it there. Or if you open the back door, then the cold air rushes in and it attempts to drive the hot air further and further up and away, and the cold air starts at the bottom and works its way up. The imbalances are always attempting to balance themselves. And in so doing, and you've got to be able to see this quite clearly, clinically, not get engrossed in it, you've got to see that the struggle to balance itself out is a violent one. It is cold air attacking hot air and vice versa. It is the aluminum siding salesman attacking the homeowner. Maybe that sounds more reasonable to you. It is the priest, the guru, a mystic, attacking would-be followers. It is a form of violence. It's just not seen as that. But the struggle to balance out the imbalance, the unrecognized struggle of, I love you, I want you to let me love you, and I want you to in some way love me. It is hot air attempting to find the correct balance in the cold air. It is to pour boiling water into ice water to where they both reach room temperature. But the boiling water is no longer hot, the freezing water is no longer cold, they both become tepid. They both reach room temperature, but in so doing they have engaged in violence. It's a transfer of energy. It is the seeking to redress an imbalance. It is the unrecognized drive for everything to come to a conclusion. And what seems to be the proper conclusion to ordinary consciousness is, I've got to reach a balance. Here it is, I've had dreams of always being a good blank, a good Christian, or a good Jew, a good person, an enlightened person, and I'm not. But the proper conclusion for my life would be, if I can balance it out, if I can redress this imbalance, that I want to be that, and I'm not. Your hot air seeking to rise. Your cold air starting from the bottom seeking to dominate and drive out the hot air. You are a reasonable homeowner attempting to resist the salesman's pitch to reside your house in aluminum for the third time. I sometimes, sound like a song coming on, I sometimes wonder not if I've made a mistake, because that's not in my diary. But if I have attempted to extract the apparent mystery from this to a sufficient degree yet. Of course, some of you within your own partnership think that I've gone too far. Some of you thought I've gone too far many moons ago. Now I went so far and it was so many moons ago, you even forgot about that part. You just kind of now accepted. But there is still a great mystery to this. The greatest mystery should be, those of you that ever hearken back to your original dreams, that the real mystery should be is, how in the hell do I know all this? Second level mystery would be, why in the hell can't you hear more of it? Our second level, laterally removed one step, is how is it that you can hear any of it? Laterally removed a third step, how is it that you can hear some of it so clearly and then forget that same sum. If I'm ever forced in some way to drag us all kicking and screaming into the public arena in a more direct manner than we're doing now, you got to smooth the spiral up, the merry-go-round up at least one turn, but your dreams, your initial dreams, your past dreams, of mystery will get rekindled. Because it is amazing. Except it gets so every day, it becomes not amazing. But as I said, I wonder if I am getting close to having pulled it to the non-amazing area of the map, almost as far as is worthwhile for most of you. I don't know, it's your privilege to wonder that, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because, for one thing, as wild-eyed, as fruitcakey as many of you were when I first met you, it was a relief, and for a few passing moments it was a relief for you until you forgot about it and took it as being every day. But it was a relief to see some of you, in a sense, just stand upright to redress the unrecognized imbalance that was unprofitable in your case if you're going to attempt to pursue this by having all sorts of would-be mystical dreams as to what this was about, who was behind it, who had to be behind it, where it all came from, how it was connected to outside spiritual and cosmic forces, and how it should be done. But then to get many of you past that point was a great relief. At least it made you bearable. I'll admit that was only from my viewpoint, but that was the only viewpoint I cared about. You obviously could stand yourself, but I couldn't. But now most of you, what I was getting at, most of you I can stand too well now. And most of you can stand yourself. But unbeknownst to you now is most of you, in a sense, or many of you I should say, not that I should say, but then again I'm Hank Agent, your County Kimball. That you almost now, many of you, can stand yourself too well. So what's the great mystery of all this? Some nights I can't hear everything you say, but sometimes I'm not sure you mean for us to say it, or sometimes it comes too convoluted in its final form. Sometimes I'm sure that my Mars is in the Nabisco house and I just couldn't hear good, or the Maxwell house. But it all makes so much sense now that I no longer worry about if you know what you're doing or whether this all is based upon some shaky foundation from some book or somebody's half-baked theory. It's pretty cut and dried now when I can really get down to it. When I'm in the right kind of mood and everything seems just right, it's pretty straightforward. I guess it would sound a little weird to my maiden aunt were she here, but by and large now I can stand it all. And you have almost come to a conclusion on one level. You've almost come to the conclusion that this is all right, that it does make sense in a strange kind of way. And of course the foremost conclusion is, more or less, this is what I had in mind. This is what I was needing originally, although I would have never recognized it or predicted it would get down to this point or be going around inside of me in this fashion, but this is it. That's just your fucking conclusion. You don't know whether that's it or not. Go back to one of my all-time favorite stories that I made up, into which all of you, I'm sure by now, believe that you would be immune. What if I showed up next week, staggering Not that that by itself would bother you, I don't guess. But come in on what was expected to be our regular meeting night. And I seemed under the influence of something. I was not my ordinary self. And I tried to make some kind of confession that all of this was some kind of sham, that I, by God, will finally tell you the truth for the first time, and that is I'm just a damn fake. I don't know what any of this means. I don't understand any of it. Well, there's no further explanation needed, just I'm a fake. Maybe I'd break down and cry, do something, throw up, pull out a gun and threaten to, kill myself, do something. Well, a lot of you now smiling and laughing. Are you sure? We went past a few seconds. You couldn't see that it was about to turn into a joke. And I just swore, listen, I'm leaving. I'm just a fake. Just forget it. Then somebody would think about the mystery of it. The three-fingered mystery. Oh, 3 minutes, I see. Three minutes. Three minutes. What is it now, about two? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Well, I guess in that case we have just enough time. Are there any questions?